All right. So in the interest of time, today I will only focus on the social emotional development. And then next week, during our final week of online classes, we will be looking at moral development. All right. And kalau sempat, right? Kalau sempat, I will talk about the first learning theory, because remember I said lepas developmental psychology we will learn about learning theories, right? So the first learning theory is called behaviorism, and under behaviorism there is your second group assignment. So your first group assignment came from last week's topic on cognitive development, if you guys can recall, about Piaget and his 4 stages of cognitive development, right? The topic on behaviorism, the learning theory, that one you are also required to come up with. That one is an experiment. You have to actually design a social science experiment on in demonstrating behaviorism. All right. I would love to cover that before Raya, because during Raya or during week 6, when you start to balik kampung and so on, you will start meeting a lot of people, right? So you can get creative with your friends. You can still meet over Google Meet on how to plan in conducting the experiments. And you boleh bagi-bagikan tugas online, all right? And you'll be seeing a lot of people and so on. So I think like during the mid-semester break is the best time to actually complete this group assignment, simply because of the fact that they are social science experiments, all right? You actually have to go and meet people, all right? So that's that. All right. I think the attendance is saturated at 32. I don't know where your other 10 friends are. Eight, I suppose, 8, 9. Okay. So I'm going to start sharing the Putra Blast page to just kind of like let you guys know where we are at right now. So this was week 2 on the emerging skills. Remember, brain development, physical development, language development, and how those affect the early literacy skills, early numeracy skills for young children, right? And then we went on to move to talking about cognitive development last week. If you guys can quickly recall on top of your head, right? We talked about Piaget's 4 stages of cognitive development, right? And then there's also this guy called Vygotsky. And Vygotsky's idea is that he says that, yes, you have the brain to think, right? But the brain can only develop its thinking capacity if, people actually interact with each other. So he says that there's the social cultural element or the environmental element that actually plays a very significant role in shaping one's thinking, right? And in relation to educating people, he's actually not an educationist, but some of his theories can actually be related to education. So he says that if you want to make people learn, the best way is to actually identify what that person's current level is, right? Which is N, and you need to teach them at least one level higher. So it's called the zone of proximal development. So every time you teach, it has to be one level slightly higher for learning to take place efficiently, right? So that's N+1, the zone of proximal development. And then he also said about the idea of scaffolding. He says that people have the capacity to learn, but as teachers, as educators, as parents, what you also need to do is to actually facilitate the learner throughout the learning process, especially in today's world where there's YouTube, there's all sorts of online courses. I mean, there's ChatGPT and so on. People have the capacity to actually learn by themselves, but you need to still be there for them to actually correct their understanding, to actually make sure that their level, the things that they're learning is actually true. There's a lot of myths in sciences and so on, and a lot of kids are learning science through YouTube. And when you actually watch those YouTube videos, sometimes you can tell that the concepts are not actually accurate and so on. So that's why you should be there to scaffold their learning. So remember the analogy about the student being in the driver's seat. If you're driving a car, the student is in the driver's seat and you are next, sitting next to the student in the passenger seat, next to the student. Yeah. So that's pretty much what Vygotsky's analogy about scaffolding is. You actually allow for the child to take charge of their learning, but oftentimes our Malaysian teachers especially, we like to prescribe to students what they need to learn, and we like to prescribe to our children as parents. We like to tell them that this is good for you, you need to be a doctor, you need to be a lawyer, you need to be this, right? We like to prescribe like a doctor, you see. But prescription is not what children need. They need to be able to actually determine their own lives and so on. Like they want to be an animator and things like that, you know. But the typical Asian mom will think that, what, animator, you know, like that's crazy, but that's where the money is coming from, right? So those things. Okay, so now we now move on to talking about wait we now move on to talk about the social and emotional, and lastly the moral development. But today I will cover the social and emotional part. All right. Let's see. Okay, so here are the key questions that you need to know. All right. What is the difference between self-esteem, self-concept, and self-efficacy? You hear that a lot everywhere, right? Self-esteem, self-concept, self-efficacy. But trust me, as common as these terms sound, these concepts is actually everything in a child. If you break a child's self-esteem, this is where all the evil in the world comes from. All right. Most of the bad guys and girls in this world actually comes from a broken self-esteem. In fact, if you look at all the superhero movies, right, you will see that all the villains actually come from if you look at their stories, their background stories, whether it's Joker or whether it's by all of Spider-Man's villains and so on, right? They all actually have a broken self-esteem somewhere along the line. Basically, all the evil characters that you see, you can actually attribute it to a broken social emotional development, not a broken brain, not so much on a broken physique and so on, but more on the social emotional part. And here's the thing, no one actually teaches you about social emotional development. And I believe even within our cultures, as a Malay, Indian, Chinese, others, Sabahan, Sarakians, right? We rarely actually teach about emotions. We rarely teach about how to regulate those emotions. We rarely teach our children how to label those emotions. And in fact, we actually rarely say that having emotions is okay. And therefore, when we actually do have these big emotional moments, we don't know what to do with them, right? We don't know how to process these emotions. And this is the part where people start killing themselves, killing other people, and so on. This is where mental health issues actually come from. All right. Like the mental health issue actually affects your thinking, right? Your cognitive capacity, but it actually comes from this part of your psyche. Okay. So we're going to understand exactly what is self-esteem, self-concept, and self-efficacy. What's self-identity, self and identity challenges faced by school-aged children. All right. Now, because you guys are going to be educators, what's your role in fostering a healthy sense of self? And especially if you're going to be parents also one day, what's your role in fostering a healthy sense of self? Like a lot of Asian children have a negative self-concept. Aku buruk, aku tak lawa, aku tak cantik, aku tak cukup tinggi, aku tak cukup kurus, and all those things, you see. It's a result of the environment that we live in, pretty much, right? And then the next question is, how do we develop a sense of right and wrong? That one is for the moral development, all right? And next one, how is emotional competence related to understanding others? Now, the thing is, even though you're so good in STEM, right? Even though you're so good in math, science, physics, and you start becoming all the great occupations out there, right? But if you don't have emotional competence, you cannot work well with people. At the end of the day, even though your field is in biomedicine, if your field is in engineering, in biotechnology, and so on, at the end of the day, all those outputs is actually made for humans. And in fact, if you're in the business branch, I mean people out there that in the business branch, at the end of the day, what they want to do is to actually to be able to understand humans, how humans work, in order for those people to actually buy your products, right? So this is the part where understanding psychology is very important. Understanding emotions is important, so that when you understand other people, then you know how to actually manage them or manipulate them into getting what you want, like whether you want their money, you want their attention, you want whatever, like Alif Shukri, right? So he goes on to wear like spandex kind of baju Melayu and stuff, and he does this like every single year, right? We know that Alif Shukri suka buat perangai gila tiap tahun. Lepas tu dia memang minta dikecam. Lepas tu bila kita kecam dia, he starts to say, he starts to answer back like, bukan ke suara saya macam Michael Jackson? Dia nak mengundang kecam lagi, right? So people like him, it's not that he doesn't understand our emotional competence. He understands it. He tries to evoke anger in you. He tries to evoke disgust in you. Even though it's anger, it's disgust, right? You're still paying attention to him. And for all you know, tiba-tiba Syazani pergi beli pula baju spandex sekejap lagi, kan? You see, the power of conditioning, the power of actually getting people's attention. So sometimes it's like, even though it's bad attention, it's still attention, and attention can actually bring money. Tapi whether it's cara Khairul Aming punya dapatkan duit or cara Alif Shukri, that's really for up to them to decide lah. Some people boleh jadi kaya bermaruah, some people boleh jadi kaya tidak bermaruah. Their choice. All right. And then how do peer acceptance and friendship contribute to development? So this topic really talks about how the social environment and how your emotional competence, social competence, the way you see yourself, the way you accept yourself, and so on, how does that actually then relate to friendship, and how friendship actually affects development. You will see that people who do not know how to make friends and so on, it actually affects their whole the way they carry themselves. So walaupun pandai gila-gila, but they don't know how to fit in the society. They don't know how to insert themselves in a majlis, in a situation. They just look awkward, and they just cannot reach their fullest potential. So in other words, at the end of the day, korang pandai macam mana pun, no matter how much knowledge you have, but if you don't know how to communicate with people, if you don't know how to make people understand you and you understand people, then you have a limit. So this is also why, if you can understand, students yang straight A's masa sekolah dulu, dia sudahnya bekerja untuk budak-budak yang dapat C masa sekolah. Because budak-budak yang dapat C ni lah yang jadi businessman, yang korang-korang yang straight A's ni go on to become teachers, become doctors, become apa kan. Macam tu. Yang dapat C, dapat D tu yang jadi politician. Lepas tu kita pula bekerja untuk dia. Sebab selalunya yang C dengan D ni lah yang sebenarnya they are like social savvy, you see. So if you want to look at success from the point of view of money, most people actually get a lot of money not from getting straight A's, but actually from being able to understand people and manipulate people. Like, does Alif Shukri go to university? I don't think so, right? So that's my point basically. Okay, moving on. So this is the concept map. There are three main themes in this topic, right? Understanding yourself first, all right? And then understanding others. So the understanding others is the two big theories that we want to learn. One is the emotional development and one is the moral development. But we'll talk about moral development next week, right? And then being able to understand yourself and being able to understand other people, all right, will then allow you to actually understand your relationship with other people. So at the end of the day, what you want as teachers is that, and as parents, is that you want your children to not only develop the cognitive capacity and the physical capacity, like minum susu, pergi sekolah yang bagus dan sebagainya, but you also actually want your kids to have social competence. All right. Okay, so bawah yang understanding ourselves ni, you can see that the dimensions of self. This is the part where we talk about the self-efficacy, self-concept, and self-esteem. All right, and when you talk about yourself in the form of across cultures, people in different cultures, they view themselves differently. In the West, right? Given the fact that it is an individualistic society, right? The self is everything. It's always a me first kind of thing. But in this side of the world, the Asian side of the world, it's always about what does my family think? What does my culture think as a Malay or as a Chinese? Is this actually right for me to do? Or as an Indian, is this something that will actually embarrass the whole Indian community, and things like that? So I can't remember which specific culture, but every time you actually praise someone, right? Dia tak boleh terima the praise, like macam let's say I would say like Aisha Rika, you're so pretty today, and then she will actually, instead of saying, oh, thank you, like the British or the Americans would say, oh, thank you, but she would then go and praise, oh, you know what, I have a very good tailor who actually made this dress for me. She will not say like thank you macam tu, ataupun macam you're so good, oh I got these good results because my teacher taught me well. You see, so things like that. Or if you look at for the K-drama fans out there, right? I've actually came across something on YouTube, like it's kind of like the red carpet award, I don't know, the Big Song Awards or something like that. And I hear their acceptance speech, kalau macam Oscar kan, yeah, thank you, I worked so hard for this, it took me 20 years to reach to where I am today, so thank you for supporting me and things like that. But the Koreans, when they accept their awards, right, they would then go on to say, I have a lot to learn, I have banyak kekurangan, I will try and please you in the future. I will try and improve more. Please forgive me for my mistakes. Who on earth would actually try, ask for people's forgiveness when they're actually receiving the award? You see, but that's where your concept of self is different from one culture to another culture. Okay. And then yang paling penting yang kita nak tengok adalah developing an identity. All right. The social emotional stages of development. The development. There are different stages of social emotional development. All right. And the theory that you need to know for social emotional competence is Erik Erikson's theory. Okay. So kalau yang moral development tu, the guy's name is called Kohlberg. All right. Here, bawah moral development, that's Kohlberg. So the theory that we want to look at for social emotional development is Erik Erikson. So there's two guys. So kalau topik yang sebelum ni, there's Piaget and Vygotsky. So this topic, you will be learning about Erik Erikson's theory of social emotional development and Kohlberg's theory of moral development. The Kohlberg kita belajar minggu depan. All right. So understanding ourselves, right? This is kind of like as if it's a straightforward thing, but you need to understand that this is pretty much everything, right? So the self is who we are, what makes us unique and who we believe ourselves to be. Sometimes people don't even know who they are, you see? Sometimes even you guys are what, 22 years old now, 21, 22 years old. Sometimes you can look like you're an adult, but you may not be psychologically independent. You might be dictated by a very controlling parent. You might be dictated by a controlling girlfriend or boyfriend, that you're not actually psychologically free. And when you're not psychologically free, you are actually not yet the mature person that you're supposed to be, because perhaps your self-concept is dictated by your parents. Your self-esteem is perhaps dictated by your one-of-a-kind one-of-a-kind boyfriend or girlfriend, right? And therefore that then affects your self-efficacy, right? So self-concept is a collection of formation, ideas, attitudes, and beliefs we have about ourselves, all right? Aku cantik, walaupun dia taklah berapa cantik macam tu kan. Aku suara macam Michael Jackson, entah celah mana lah kan. Tapi itu self-concept dia tentang diri dia macam tu kan. Orang nampak lain tapi dia nampak lain. Orang nampak kita cantik tapi kita rasa kita buruk. Sebab apa? Sebab dari kecil macam sentiasa diejek-ejek. You know, I come from a culture where my mom is actually a Minang, you know. So I tak tahulah orang Minang ni dia jenis yang macam kalau jumpa time raya apa semua kan, anak kau SPM berapa? Adalah 9A tapi bukannya A plus pun, takat-takat A aja macam tu. Tapi dia bodoh, masak nasi pun tak pandai macam tu. Dia bukannya, dia macam dia cuba je cari benda yang tak elok pasal anak dia macam tu. Anak aku lagi tak guna macam tu, you know. So the kids, when they listen to that, you know, they take it differently and they would think that I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough. So growing up, you know, especially like the Minang culture, they like to give like physical remarks. You see, like macam pendek, macam ataupun macam cantik anak kau. Tak adalah, aku tak nampak ke dia pendek ku And like growing up, my family members would call me like mata petai macam tu kan. Kita ingat macam mata petai tu tak elok lah sebab petai tu busuk as a child, you see, as a child. So what happens to me and my self-concept is that you think that you have really ugly eyes. To a young me, I thought that I had ugly eyes. So what I've been doing is I've been squinting my eyes, you know, like saja je buat kecil macam ni kan. That's the environment actually shaping your self-concept and eventually shaping your self-esteem. And growing up, I always believe that I am ugly. Aku selalu tunduk aja and things like that. So that's the danger of labeling. That's the danger of easily making physical remarks and so on, which is widespread among the Asian community, right? So self-concept is a collection of information, ideas, attitudes, beliefs that we have about ourselves. It can be a different thing altogether, but growing up, you think that you are a certain way and that's how you think you are. I'm not that good. I'm not good in English, I'm not good in that, I'm not, you know, those things. And that self-concept will then affect your self-esteem, how happy you are of yourself, how satisfied you are of yourself, and how eventually confident you are of yourself. So if you can agree with me, people who are actually yang suka belagak tu kan, yang macam suka cakap macam agak besar tu lah kan, if you actually listen to them carefully, you will realize that they might perhaps have insecurity issues. People who are confident of themselves, people who are happy with themselves, they are happy in their own skin, you know. They don't need to make statements to validate themselves, you see. So if you go onto your social media pages and you see that people are actually speaking on a higher note and so on, they could potentially actually have self-esteem issues. They could potentially have insecurity issues. If you're in a conversation with a friend and they always need to say that they know and you know, that they're always on one note higher, you know, they could actually be insecure in the first place, because people who are confident of themselves, they don't feel that they need to blow their trumpet. So that's the part where psychologists, you know, if you understand psychology, you can actually understand people and the way they behave. Like every single thing that they do, there's a reason behind it, okay? So now self-concept and self-esteem actually then affects self-efficacy, all right? So self-efficacy is the one that then determines how successful you are, you know, how efficient you are, your sense of being able to manage a task effectively and successfully in a particular domain. Some people are not efficient. You know, you guys think that apa benda lah this concept ni kan. But a lot of kids actually have issues with self-efficacy. In fact, a lot of students who actually don't get to go to university, of course, you know, actually has issues with self-efficacy, and that's why they did not make it to university level. You might think that this is something yang macam, this is just common sense, really, you know. But a lot of people don't really know how to manage a task. A lot of people don't actually know, like kalau macam let's say lah, I suruh you guys buat that experiment tu kan, they don't even know how to plan ahead, how to actually break things down. And okay, first nak buat apa, lepas tu nak buat apa, lepas tu nak buat apa. They're not really good with that. And when you're not good with that, there's going to be a lot of things that you're actually missing in life, for example. Or if, let's say, if I can give you an example, like me as an adult, right? Katakanlah I dekat office, but I'm actually at home right now. So katakanlah I kat office, and then I fikir macam, oh, malam ni nak masak ayam golek lah, macam tu kan. Lepas tu pergi kedai, balik dari office, pergi singgah kedai beli ayam. Lepas tu balik rumah, lepas tu macam jap, ayam golek ni nak kena ada apa kan? Oh, kena ada serai, kena ada ketumbar. Alah, serai tak belilah, keluar balik pergi kedai. Macam tu. Lepas tu dah balik rumah, rasa kalau makan dengan jelly sedap juga ni, jelly KFC pun sedap. Lepas tu pergi pula KFC. You know, that is self-efficacy. And I'm telling you this based on a real story where my uncle's wife actually is like this. I can actually you know, like profile her that she has poor self-efficacy. You see, so and poor self-efficacy will actually affect your cognitive performance. You see, like a slower cognitive performance and so on. And that then actually affects kids. If we're talking about kids chances of getting to university and kids chances of getting a good job and so on. Okay, so that's self-efficacy for you. Okay, this one, that's not needed. Okay, so I'm going to start talking about the Erik Erikson's theory of identity development. I'm aware that some of you have to leave class at 10, right? So Erik Erikson says that, so you know what? Yang tadi tiga tadi tu, self-concept, self-esteem, self-efficacy, kan? Yang tiga konsep tadi tu that actually shapes who you are. Who am I, you know? It is actually tied with identity development. So Erik Erikson proposed that there is 8 stages of developing your identity as a person, like who you are. Walaupun you know, you are a pediatric surgeon ke, you are a pilot ke, you are a marine engineer ke, you know, but at the end of the day, you're human. So who are you even though you're a maritime engineer? Who are you even though you are a surgeon? Who are you? What's your personality like? You ni panas baran ke? You're happy ke? Are you confident of yourself ke? Are you insecure ke? You know, so it actually then ties back to that self-esteem, self-concept, and self-efficacy. And these 3 things is actually shaped by what you go through in these 8 stages of life. All right. So Erik Erikson says that there are 8 stages of psychosocial development. Psychosocial is actually psycho and then social. So how that the social environment actually shapes the way you think about yourself. All right. And he says that each stage is characterized by a psychosocial crisis. There are crises that you go through that at each stage that if you get to fulfill them, then you move on to the next stage healthily, emotionally healthily, you know. But if you not fulfill that stage, you go on to the next stage with a deficit, you know, sort of disequilibrium, you move on to the next stage. And then in this stage, you tak okay juga, you move on to another stage with ada 2 stages yang you carry as a baggage that's not fulfilled. So as you go through life and when you start reaching my stage, you know, my age, right? When you have all these deficits throughout your life, all these social emotional competence that you're supposed to fulfill but did not meet, right? That's when people start becoming crazy and so on. Okay. So here they are. Let me go ahead and share my own PowerPoint. Sekejap. Stop presenting a window. Okay, this one. Okay, you guys can see, right? Oops. Okay. So there are 8 stages of psychosocial development. So this one, I just want to walk you guys through it. The first stage, that red one, right, is at the infancy stage. Is called developing a trust. Or if you don't develop trust, you develop mistrust. All right. And then there's autonomy versus shame, shame and doubt. That one is at the toddler stage. Either you develop a sense of autonomy, right, a sense of getting to do things, a sense of like you actually have the choice to do things, right, the power to do things, um, or if you don't develop it, you somehow learn to feel doubtful of yourself, you somehow feel shameful of yourself. This is not something that you're aware, it's more of like things that go through in the unconscious mind. It just forms your self-concept, self-esteem, without you like consciously being aware that these concepts are being developed within you. All right. And then there's the preschooler stage, initiative versus guilt. Either you feel like you can initiate things, you can do things, or you're just always feeling guilty. All right. And then grade schooler is like sekolah rendah, the blue one. All right. You feel industrious. Industrious is actually being busy, like doing stuff, masuk pengakap lah, masuk tunas puci lah, masuk St. John ambulance and all those things, right? Or you start feeling inferior. You already start feeling like, yelah aku kelas corot, yang semua pengawas-pengawas tu dekat kelas nombor 1 and things like that, you know. You start feeling inferior. Your self-esteem has started to develop, that you feel that you're a nobody and so on. Or on the other hand, you feel that you can conquer the world, you're going to go to a good school for secondary, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, and so on. Masuk choral speaking, masuk choir, masuk debate, masuk, you know. All right. And then at the teenage stage, there's, of course, with all the emotion, with the hormonal changes that go, that is impacted by physical development at the teenage years, right? So they also go through identity versus role confusion. All right. And then young adult, this is where you guys are at right now. Either you are able to develop a sense of intimacy, all right, or you start, you know, towards the end of your psychosocial stage, the young adult stage, right? If you don't yet find a romantic partner, that's when you start feeling as if you're feeling left out, and so on, like orang dah tolak stroller dengan anak and so on, dah you know, your dah ada group, instead of group lepak mamak pukul 3 pagi, you know, your friends dah tukar ada WhatsApp group like mama papa ke macam tu kan, support group mama papa, kat mana kita nak beli pampers yang murah hari ni, dekat Maidin ke yang ada sales, you know. People who are like about 5 years older than you, that's what they're doing right now. They have that kind of WhatsApp group. And people at my age, you know, these are the kinds yang macam mana nak dapatkan anak masuk sekolah Alam Shah, macam mana nak dapatkan anak masuk sekolah you know, STAR dekat Ipoh, you know, sebab UPSR dah tak ada ni, so tapi ada berlambak-lambak exam lain ni, so macam mana nak, you know, tu WhatsApp group yang kalau my age pula, you see. So if you don't actually belong to any of these groups, if you're not like the normal curve lah, orang kata kan, kalau statistics that you're not within that normal curve, you start feeling isolated, right? You start feeling like nobody wants to lepak mamak with you at 3 o'clock in the morning anymore and so on, because they have commitments. Macam tu. Alright. And then when you get to my stage, ya Allah, I'm a middle age dah ke. There's the generativity, generate, you know, versus stagnation. This is the part that if from the red, daripada bawah tu, you know, you are good. When you reach this yellowish part, this is the part where you only want to help the society, you want to help the community, you want to, so you become a lecturer, you become a teacher, you become a politician, you become a doctor, you know, you want to help build the country and future generation, blah, 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 blah. Tapi kalau you're not going anywhere in your life, without sounding like I'm disrespecting Grab food drivers or Grab drivers and so on, but I wanted to say, let's say, you know, if at the age of macam you guys right now, someone tak masuk universiti, lepas tu dia terus buat Grab for example. Mula seronok lah, masuk lah kan, masuk. Oh, boleh dapat 4,000, 5,000 if I really work on this, you know. It's fun. Nobody wants to actually yell at you for not going to the meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning ke, ataupun macam saya hari Jumaat mengajar dan sebagainya kan. Rasa-rasa macam nak pergi bawa kereta, bawa lah kereta kan. Macam tu. Rasa nak tidur, kita tidur je lah. You know, more power to us. But when you start, you know, if you start being a Grab driver from, let's say 18 years old, by the time you reach 38 years old, after like 20 years of driving, and yet sebenarnya you pandai, you know, and then you start questioning yourself, is this all that I can do? Can I not contribute further? And then you look at, bila masuk Facebook, Instagram kan, kita tengok kawan kita berkempen atas lori kan, about you know, carbon emission lah, apalah, itulah, inilah, and here you are just like driving your car for 20 years, and that's the part where stagnant, you know, you feel like your life is not going anywhere. This is like tepu je. Actually, a lot of teachers feel this. When they start like at your age, lepas tu dia graduate, lepas tu dia pergi mengajar, tapi dia mengajar, dia decided to be the mediocre teacher that I said, right? Yang dia sendiri tak tahu apa dia ajar, student pun tak tahu apa dia ajar, you know, you're wasting your time, you're wasting the students' time, and all you're telling yourself right now lah, tak apa je lah, memang fizik memang susah, nak buat macam mana, tapi janji aku dapat gaji 3,600 sebulan, 5,000, okay lah, you know. But 20 years into the job, this is the part where you start to have burnout because you feel like you're not going anywhere. Kawan-kawan dah jadi guru cemerlang, dah dapat kereta lah, apalah, itulah, ini, dah naik jadi pegawai PPD lah, dah jadi nazir sekolah, right? And yet you're there, still in the same school, the first school that you were posted to. There's nothing wrong there, but in your little heart, you may feel something when you start reaching my stage and you're not going anywhere with your career, you start feeling stagnant. And this is when you see that there's a lot of people going through midlife crisis. Tiba-tiba dia pakai motor Harley Davidson lah, kan? Tiba-tiba jadi macam Samsul Yusof ke, kan? Dapat bini baru. Worst is like Andy Lala, I read, kan? Bapak Sheila Hamzah ke apa kan? Tiba-tiba dia kahwin dengan kawan sekolah Sheila Hamzah. Itu midlife crisis lah tu, sebab dia rasa stagnant, kan? Macam tu. Midlife crisis comes from people with self-esteem issues, and they feel like they need to add spice because they don't want to feel stagnant. But if you know your goal, your purpose, you know, I talked to you during the first class the other day, if you know where you're going with your career, with your life, why you were sent on this earth in the first place, how much pahala you want to get before you die, you don't have time to be stagnant. You know, you don't have time to be lazy. You don't have time to actually lament and so on. Okay. Now, given the fact that kalau everything is fulfilled, I'm actually going to go through one by one kejap lagi sebenarnya what all these mean. But if everything is fulfilled, daripada merah, pink, purple, biru, you know, all those colors are fulfilled. So when you reach that highest level to older adult, which is pretty much most of our politicians right now lah, kan? When you reach that stage, you should have developed a sense of integrity. So you no longer rasa macam you need to kaut segala keuntungan ke, worse, actually you know, taking our country's funds, you know, that one MDB scandal ke apa ke, you don't feel like doing those things anymore because you will have developed a solid sense of integrity within you. You know, your life is now just trying to help other people, sustain your country, sustain the world, and make it like continue to be a better place for future generations. But let's say you don't go through all these stages healthily, you know, and like I said, kalau from the baby stage, you don't develop trust well, you know, then you develop a sense of mistrust. That mistrust carries on, you know. So at the end of the day, towards the end, you live an elderly life in despair. And you can see that a lot of our elderly people feeling despair, right? Some like, I don't want to live anymore. I don't see a sense of purpose and so on. You know, and if you look at the bawah sekali itu mistrust, you can see that a lot of kisah-kisah, if you look at movies or revenge movies and so on, it all has to do with the mistrust part. And if you look at people yang macam sikit-sikit dia macam call boyfriend dia, ni kat mana, ni kat mana, ni kat mana, ataupun yang boyfriend ni kat mana, tak pun kalau masing-masing ada Apple phone kan, asyik tengok je yang Find My ni kat mana, asyik locate aja kan, macam tu. Lepas tu agak-agak macam ni je dia pergi ping, so developing a sense of mistrust. Okay, so let me share the next slide. Okay, so apa bendanya yang trust versus mistrust, autonomy versus shame, dan sebagainya ni kan. This one, kejap, this is a better slide lah, but I like this colored one first. So the trust versus mistrust, right? If needs are dependably met, infants develop a sense of basic trust, and trust is really important in life sebenarnya. So what does it mean an infant can develop a sense of trust? What does this actually mean? So as an infant, as a baby, right, you don't know how to communicate your needs, whether you want a diaper change, whether you're actually hungry, whether you're actually thirsty, or whether you're hot, all you do is just cry, right? So you can take that if a baby cries, you would understand that the baby would want something, but you as the caregiver will just have to figure out whether dia sakit perut ke, dia lapar ke, dia nak diaper change ke. You have to, there's just like those cries, and then dia nak tidur ke kan, menangis sebab nak tidur, or mengantuk and things like that. You have to figure out. Now, a lot of babies, when I was born, I still had not only my grandmother, I also had my great-grandmother still alive at that time, you see. So my needs as an infant was dependably met. When I cry, there's not only just my grandmother, there was also my great-grandmother there. And my mother being the eldest child, she has her younger siblings. So, there was so many people who actually were there for me, you see. So when I cry, people come. And when people come, for some reason, as a child, as a baby, you develop a sense of trust. There's a trust there. Or if you cry, you're at the living room and you cry as a baby, basically, not you as an adult right now. Mau kau kena lempang je pula kan, menangis-nangis, kenapa nak mak macam tu. So when you cry as a baby in the living room, and then your mother is in the kitchen, right, and then she comes to you, you develop that sense of trust. But especially in today's world, right, babies, when they cry and cry and cry and cry, their needs were not being met. Like nobody comes to them. Especially if you send your children to daycare, right? There's like 12 babies in a room, and then like you cry and this one cries and this one cries, and then most of the time you are asked to actually self-soothe yourself, you see. So kids, babies, if they don't develop that sense of trust, they ended up not trusting people. They ended up not feeling that you're not safe, you might be dangerous to me, you might, especially babies yang kejap hantar kat daycare yang ini, kejap hantar kat daycare yang ini, kejap hantar kat daycare yang ini. Lepas bila hantar kat yang ini, kena marah. Nangis je kena marah, nangis je kena cubit. How is it possible that they can develop a sense of trust, right? So from deep down inside, even the cognitive development yang kita belajar last week is still, the sensory motor stage. Remember, Piaget kata, even though it's not fully developed, those early ideas is there. The schema about trust is already developing somewhere in your brain, right? And then you move on to being a toddler. All right, so toddlers learn to exercise will, the willpower, and do things for themselves. And a lot of Western parents allow for their toddlers to explore the world, go, do this, or you're gonna make a milkshake, let's do this, or if, but the Asian parents, we're like, karang kalau bawa kan tumpah, pecah tu karang, ini, macam tu kan, nak kalau terpawai ke apa kan, mak memang marah betul lah kalau terpawai hilang dan sebagainya kan. So kalau sentiasa kena marah, tak payahlah, tak boleh buat pun, adik kecil lagi. So they start doubting themselves. You start doubting yourself, like, boleh ke aku buat, like, and then you start thinking that you don't know how to do things. You start thinking that other people are better than you. So that's autonomy versus shame and doubt. But sekejap. Yang tadi tu, yang trust versus mistrust, if you actually finally develop that sense of trust, you actually develop a sense of, kejap you actually then develop a sense of hope. You see here, hope, all right? You develop that sense of hope. And hope is a very, very important thing. This is nothing to do with Pakatan Harapan, hope ke apa tidak, but hope actually, this is the reason why you live. This is the reason why you come to class today. You hope that you can actually succeed. It's something that is like as if it's is an abstract concept. But if I take away hope out of people, this is the part where people kill themselves. A lot of people yang bunuh diri are people yang dah tak ada harapan. Dia tak ada rasa yang you see, the one that the best way is just to die, you see. So this is why hope is a very, very, very fundamental virtue that we need to instill not only in our own children but in the children that we teach, because sometimes people just do feel hopeless because and why? Because berbalik-balik kepada tadi, dia tidak percaya. They develop a sense of tak percaya ke orang. Lepas tu bila dia masuk sekolah rendah pun kawan-kawan pun selalu tipu lah, apalah, itulah. So lagi dia tak percaya and then sebagainya. So and then bila when they get to your stage, itu yang macam as a boyfriend, like you don't really fully trust your girlfriend, or as a girlfriend you always feel like you need to check on your boyfriend. Perhaps it has to do, if you have that habit, perhaps it has to do with you not being able to fully develop a sense of trust from when you were much younger. All right. Okay. So apa tu tadi yang the autonomy versus shame ni for the toddlers, right? If you actually allow for them to do things, they will then develop a sense of will, the sense of willpower, And then at the play school age, the kindergarten stage, right? Initiative versus guilt. This is the part where preschoolers learn to initiate tasks, right? Kan dia suka tolong cikgu lah, apalah, and carry out plans, right? And they feel guilt, or kalau you don't actually give them the right exposure, the right opportunity to develop a sense of initiative, they might feel guilty about their efforts to be independent. A simple example is actually about like kalau macam pakai tali kasut kan, selalu parents like yang early 20s or late 20s, early 20s kurang kan, late 20s toddlers, right? Most of the time they you cannot, you tak reti pun nak ikat kasut ni, nanti mama yang kena ikatkan tali kasut ni, for example. Alright, and then selalu bila dia pakai terbalik-terbalik, you tak rasa sabar nak ajar yang mana yang betul dan sebagainya. So they keep thinking that they're wrong. They keep thinking that they're helpless, they're useless, nak suruh bawakan air ke, dia nak tolong kita masak, dia nak tolong bawakan air, kita tak bagi. As Asian parents, we normally tak bagi, and therefore they don't develop that sense of initiative, and they always feel that they don't know how to be independent, you see. And then, but if things go right, they will develop a sense of purpose. And the sense of purpose is very, very important, right? And then at the sekolah rendah age, the industrious versus inferiority, right? At the sekolah rendah age, children learn the pleasure of applying themselves to tasks, right? I can help do this. Boleh jadi ketua rumah sukan, boleh buat ni, boleh diharap, basically, alright. Sebab tu yang mana-mana yang dapat jadi pengawas tu, perasan tak, dia jalan pun macam lain macam kan, sebab dia rasa confident. Kenapa dia rasa confident? Because their self-esteem is good, their self-concept is good. Kenapa self-concept dia bagus? Sebab cikgu kata percaya dekat dia untuk jadi pengawas, untuk jadi pembimbing rakan sebaya, macam tu. So that affects their self-esteem. Your self-concept affects your self-esteem, and your self-esteem then affects the way your self-efficacy. Aku budak bagus, aku boleh tolong orang lain, aku ini, but mana budak yang macam nakal-nakal sikit apa semua tu, kita makin ketepikan dia daripada the system. Sepatutnya dia itulah yang kita celebrate dan letakkan jadi ketua supaya dia boleh develop that sense of self-concept dan cikgu dia percaya dengan dia. So that then helps with their self-esteem, and self-esteem helps with self-efficacy. malangnya dekat sekolah yang dah memang bagus, baik ni yang kita bagi jadi pengawas, lepas tu yang teruk ni pula kita suruh budak-budak ni jaga budak yang ni. So yang ini yang kita sebenarnya nak tolong ni makinlah dia punya self esteem lagi teruk, right? Saya ada tengok satu video, this is silly. Sekolah agama agaknya, sekolah menengah agama. Semua orang dalam kelas tu adalah pengawas, macam-macam colour, baju dia kan hijau ada, purple ada, apa semua. Dalam kelas ada seorang yang pakai baju sekolah menengah biasa. You see, how would that one boy feel when semua orang lain pengawas dalam kelas dia? Semua orang, saya rasa tu nombor satu lah tu kan. Ada seorang je yang pakai baju putih, seluar sekolah menengah. Yang lain tu semua pakai tudung purple, tudung hijau, tudung kuning and ada jawatan. You see? So how would that actually, that the environment, shapes that boy's self-concept, self-esteem and self-efficacy. You see? So those things, dia banyak salah tu pada sistem, pada guru, because we simply do not understand basic psychology, right? So if a child is actually given the opportunity, especially yang nakal-nakal kan, nakal yang konon-kononnya tak pay attention, yang sebenarnya tak faham apa dalam your class tu, but if you actually just trust them, it starts off with that basic thing. If you trust them, they will change, basically. They will change, right? But if we keep on saying that macam you are really up to no good, kenapalah kau ada dalam kelas aku ni dan sebagainya. So they start developing a sense of inferiority, and even your children too, especially if you have like 4 children and you start comparing from one child to another child, that's kind of like fatal. That is disastrous. And I think if you guys, you go through the same, you might have siblings, and if your parents actually exercise this, like kenapa kau tak macam abang kau, kenapa kau tak macam adik kau, kenapa, the kenapa tu is the fatal word. And then it starts sinking in and you start believing it that way. And this is the part where clinical psychologists will actually have to question you back. But why do you think that way? Untuk betulkan balik cara you berfikir. Because most of the time sebenarnya the way we think tu yang rosak. Because of the way we were raised. Betul, emotional damage. Betul. Memang Asians memang banyak emotional damage, you see. And we don't know how to correct ourselves again. Sebab it's something that yang kalau kita belajar next week about conditioning, we were conditioned to it, because itu yang menjadi zikir harian yang kita dengar hari-hari, and itu yang menjadi, that shapes our self-concept, alright? Okay, and then at this sekolah rendah age, kalau you were given the opportunity untuk jadi ketua rumah sukan, jadi pengarah hari kantin dan sebagainya, you develop competence. Perasan tak yang jadi pengawas, yang jadi ketua rumah sukan ni, dia tak adalah hebat mana, tapi dia punya confidence dia tu membawa kepada dia boleh develop a sense of competence, right? And then we move on to your client. Your client is actually sekolah menengah, right? This is a tricky stage. Whether they develop a healthy sense of identity, tak kisahlah identity dia apa kan, but it's a healthy sense of identity, atau dia rasa confused, aku ni siapa, aku nak jadi ini ke, aku nak jadi ini, aku ni sebenarnya apa, especially kalau ke anak tengah. This is the part yang a lot of people kata ada middle child syndrome. The parents will always like pamper the firstborn. That's the gem, right? Everything is very careful, everything is brand new, everything is, and then there's you in the middle, and then there's let's say the fatal one in psychology is kalau ada 3 anak, you see. And then the second one will actually develop a sense of second child syndrome. So yang kalau yang nombor 3 tu pula, it's like being slack off lah. Dia akan tak apa kan. Memang manja habis lah kan. Macam result kalau gagal dapat D ke apa, mak tak adalah marah kan. Tapi anak tengah ni selalunya macam kenapa tak bagus macam abang? Kenapa tak bagus macam kakak? Kenapa? So then they start questioning why? And they become rebellious. So a lot of rebellious ones actually come from anak nombor 2 or anak yang tengah. Tapi kalau katakanlah ada 9 adik-beradik kan, Itu macam anak tengah tu ramai kan. So yang tengah tu dia macam-macam lah personality dia. So kalau mungkin anak tengah yang nombor 3, 4 lain sikit personality dia. Anak yang mungkin nombor 6, 7 tu mungkin lagi lain. Dia mungkin selalu rasa terpinggir sebab adik-beradik 9 orang atau adik-beradik 11 orang, right? So yang nombor 6, 7, 8 ni macam dapat tak dapat je kasih sayang, macam rasa tak rasa je kasih sayang kan. Macam this is so many in the family. So it's the social emotional part yang macam challenging, right? So going back to the adolescence, right? Teenagers work at refining, that they start to refine a sense of self by testing roles and then integrating them to form a single identity. So I am this pengawas at school, I am also anak sulung, gitu kan. I am this, so okay, I understand now that my purpose is to actually, okay, I ni membawa amanah yang besar ni, like in my family dan sebagainya. Or if like me kan, I am the eldest child, and I am not just the eldest child, I am also the firstborn grandchild, you see. So when I am like the firstborn grandchild, all eyes are on you. You see, you are the first one to ambil IPSR, you are the first one untuk ambil SPM dan sebagainya. You see, so everything is like all eyes are on you, and you somehow develop a sense that you have to set the track right. That if you don't do things right, all your cousins below you will actually see you as their role model. That is somewhat what I feel. But my sister, I actually come from a family of just 2 siblings. There's just me and my sister. My sister has a completely different personality. She's like, I don't care, like whatever, as opposed to at my father's side, right? I am like one of the youngest ones, so we don't care. I mean, in my father's side, I somehow develop a different sense of personality. I'm like the younger ones, because all my other cousins are kind of like adults and they're like grandmas and so on themselves, you see. So you develop a different sense of personality depending on which side of the family you're from, right? So going back to the adolescence, right? Especially if this is the part where their parents are already middle-aged parents, right? In their 50s, late 40s, 50s, right? So this is the part where the parents are going through midlife crisis, yang ada skandal lah, yang nak kahwin 3, 4, 5 dan sebagainya. So while they themselves are trying to develop a sense of identity, right? So they start getting confused. This is the one that I said about my colleague who went through divorce, and she lump summed everything to her teenage son untuk shoulder the task being left by the husband. It was my colleague who actually went, who engaged in a scandal. Lepas tu dia pula pening bila dia sendiri dah tak ada suami. So anak dia ni lah yang nak kena drive dia ke sana, nak kena betulkan bulb lampu lah, lampu terbakar dan sebagainya. So this teenage boy becomes so confused. You see, I'm just like a Form 4 student, and here you are asking me to bring you here, bring you there, bring here. So this confusion there. Also, during my time, right? The music industry will actually have a strong influence on how you dress, how you position yourself. So back then, during my time, there was like Eminem, like hip hop. There's that was the end of the era of the Spice Girls. When I was a child, it was the Spice Girls, the Backstreet Boys, and the NSYNC and so on. But when I got to secondary school, it was all about Britney Spears. It was all about Christina Aguilera. It was all about Eminem. It's all about segala-gala hip hops lah. So this is the part where all these guys will either I think there's a band called Green Day, and all the the band members actually pakai celak-celak kan, pakai celak-celak tu kan, My Chemical Romance pun semua tu kan pakai celak-celak. So all the guys pergi sekolah pun pakai celak macam tu kan. Lepas tu mana yang macam rasa-rasa macam dia berkiblatkan Eminem kan, hip hop kan, Slim Shady, pakai baju pakai seluar labu-labu kan, yang sampai celah buntut pun nampak, the butt crack tu sampai labu-labu. Lepas tu pakai rantai anjing kan, macam tu. Rasa macam habis-habis smart lah kan. Lepas tu sekali bila masuk masuk komuter kan, komuter tu bukan MRT, yang komuter kat Serdang tu kan, pakai rantai anjing kan, mata ini kan, gapo dio, oh rupanya orang Kelantan kan. So, tak apalah, walaupun gapo dia tu tapi nak Eminem juga tu, macam tu lah. Alright, so confusion di situ ya, confusion. So there's still tercari-cari. So jangan susah hati sangat lah kalau you guys jadi cikgu kan, hari ni dia macam kejap begini, kejap begitu, kejap macam tu kan. Yang sama macam artis-artis Malaysia lah, agaknya dia masih confused kan, kejap pakai tudung, kejap buka, tiba-tiba pakai nikab, tiba-tiba macam tu lah kan. Macam Niloufar lah kan, tiba-tiba pakai nikab, tapi tiba-tiba kalau macam bagi saya lah, kalau pakai nikab takkanlah nak pakai high heel tinggi-tinggi macam ni lagi kan. Tapi masih pakai, so kita pun confused. Mungkin dia masih confused lah, mencari identiti dia lagi lah agaknya. Macam tu kan. Okay, macam Ukasha kan, kejap pakai, kejap tak pakai dan sebagainya, macam tu. So dia confused lagi. Aku ni sebenarnya alim ke, tak alim ke, aku ni liberal ke apa, macam tu lah. Dia masih mencari-cari. Alright. So apatah lagi kalau your students nanti adalah like baru 16, 17 tahun, macam tu. Maafkanlah diorang. Diorang takkan pakailah seluar labu-labu tu selamanya. Tapi sekarang ni, yang kalian sekarang zaman korang ni yang nak pakai yang atas-atas buku lali pula kan. Macam wak doyok apa segala tu kan, nak ketat-ketat macam tu kan. Semua orang duk pakai ketat-ketat kan. Lepas tu semua orang nak macam kulit cantik macam BTS, macam tu. Lepas tu pakai lip balm pergi kelas kalau yang lelaki lah. Dia macam lain lah. So dia mencari-cari identiti. Gitu. Alright. So at the adolescent stage, you develop a sense of fidelity. Okay, kejap. Fidelity. Yes, you develop a sense of fidelity. Loyalty, all right? And then at the where you guys are at right now, intimacy versus isolation. So ini yang saya katakan masa awal semester hari tu, masa first class, korang dah ada romantic partner ke belum? Macam tu. Kalau ada, that's pretty normal. Tapi kalau tak ada, it's normal tu. Tapi if you feel like macam jijik macam budak-budak sekolah rendah, macam ew kan. Kalau budak sekolah rendah kan macam bila sebut pasal boyfriend girlfriend kan macam ew kan. So if you still feel that way, then you actually really have to sit back and reflect, are you actually normal? So you need to understand that romantic feelings at your stage is absolutely normal. Couple here and there is absolutely normal. All right, it is actually expected. All right. Kejap. Si Mai Sarah baru sampai kelas ya. Okay, kejap. Okay. And this is the part where young adults struggle to form close relationships and to gain the capacity for intimate love. Ataupun if you tak dapat, you will feel socially isolated. You will start, not now. Now is like pretty fine, but when you pass through this stage and you get to my stage, you start feeling as if kawan-kawan dah sibuk hantar anak pergi sekolah dan sebagainya. Kita sibuk panjat-panjat gunung pukul 2 pagi, pukul 3 pagi. Lepas tu lama-lama kita pun fikir macam, am I right? Am I wrong? Macam tu kan. Aku ni okay ke? Tak okay ke? Kat situlah datangnya all these mental health issues, these so-called mental health issues kan. Macam tu. Tapi korang at this stage kalau belum ada boyfriend girlfriend, janganlah macam nak murung-murung. Macam korang muda sangat lagi. Banyak lagi masa nak cari tu. Okay? Alright. And then, moving on right here, at this stage, the intimacy versus isolation, right? If you develop this stage well, you will develop the virtue of love, right? And love is basically a very human thing. Some people just do not have the capacity to love, like a sociopath. You see, they don't have the capacity to actually engage in human feelings. Dia tak rasa apa bila kita hug and so on, dia tak ada rasa, they don't feel it, and that's a sad thing. You see, that's a really sad thing, because what makes us human is actually the relationships, the tenderness feeling of being friends with people, having companionship. And here's one thing that I can share with you guys. My husband is actually a lecturer in public health. So his research actually looks into factors that predict health. Factors that predict health in adults. And out of the many factors, especially he looks at like the social, he looks at different factors, right? the one that strikes out, and this is among the Malaysian population, the one that strikes out the most is the most significant predictor of health, overall health, is actually social engagement. It's not your brain capacity, it's not anything else, it's not money, it's pretty much your social engagement. Your relationship with other people actually determines your health status. Whether or not you are happily married or happily in a relationship, or you have a good of happy supporting friends, happy supportive family members, that significantly predicts health, and that comes as no surprise, because there's also a study by Harvard. It's a study that has been going on for more than 80 years. Harvard University have started this study more than 80 years ago, and they looked at what actually predicts health. And one of the significant factors is whether or not you have a significant other, whether it's a romantic partner, it's a spouse, right? But you are in a healthy long-term relationship with others. That's the most significant factor that affects health. And what I'm hearing as a psychologist is that it's the love, basically. When you actually have people who love you and you have the capacity to love others, whether if you don't have supportive family, but you actually have supportive friends, that you really belong, um, that you feel like they are also part of your family, that you can call family, that actually helps you maintain your health. And when I talk about health here, I don't really mean just like physical health. What this also means is actually the mental health here, up here. And the mental health actually affects the physical health, and the physical health also affects the mental health. You can go and read up on that, you see. So if you're stressed, that's when you start having stomach issues. Or if you're not taking good care of your stomach and you eat all the junk things from the Bazaar Ramadan, it also affects your mental health status, because there are neurons in your gut area too. Gut feelings is real, all right? So you can go and read more on that later, all right? So going back to here, then there's my stage, right? The generativity versus stagnation. So the middle age discover a sense of contributing to the world, right? Mengajar pagi-pagi Jumaat, macam tu kan. Lepas tu kalau yang lelaki kan kejap lagi pergi sembahyang Jumaat, pergi sedekah Jumaat, lepas tu kok ada yang weekend ni pergi volunteer pula dan sebagainya, so usually through family and work, alright. Ataupun kalau you yang mana yang macam menganggur aja kan, macam yang isteri dia yang pergi kerja, dia pula konon-konon jaga anak kat rumah tapi yang kerjanya tidur aja kan. So lama-lama mulalah rasa lack of purpose. Ataupun same goes to housewives. There is a lot of burnout among housewives, a lot of mental health issues among housewives, yang a lot of us tak tahu, tak sedar, is because they are trapped inside the house. People kalau tak bercakap dengan orang, tak bergaul dengan orang, kat sini ni dia crumble. Remember kita belajar minggu lepas about schemas, about sel-sel otak berhubung. The more experiences you have, the more the electrical charges and sebagainya. But if you're trapped inside your house and all you do is just watch Netflix dan sebagainya, pusing kat rumah, lipat kain, basuh baju, penat is penat, but you're not stimulating your brain, you're not going out dan sebagainya, then you start feeling a lack of purpose. So that is why a lot of housewives tiba-tiba je bila suami dia balik, dia baling pinggan kat laki dia macam tu kan, especially bila dia duk track laki dia dekat mana kan, because they're not doing a lot. And this is the part where they start overthinking dan sebagainya. I have like my colleague in FPP, his wife tak kerja, but she used to be a teacher. Tapi at some point you rasa macam tak nak lah, nak duduk rumah lah, nak jaga anak lah kan. When you start not going out and not seeing people, mulalah macam you start overthinking. So bila tiba-tiba macam ada murtabak basi pun dia boleh macam tak tidur malam. This is real, she developed OCD. yang korang selalu sebut OCD tu kan. She develop OCD, dia was-was with everything. Semua benda dia fikir. Kenapa murtabak ni basi? Kenapa dia boleh tak ingat untuk masukkan murtabak ni dalam fridge? Kan dah waste of resources. Kalau waste of resources ni berdosa ke tak berdosa? Mesti berdosa. Macam itulah. Dia nampak tak macam dia tak betul tu? Macam tu. So this is real. This is real. Sampai kena pergi jumpa clinical psychologist. Betulkan balik. Itu OCD yang betul tau. OCD yang betul lah. Korang kan sikit-sikit macam kalau saya aku ni OCD lah, aku OCD. Tak, OCD yang betul-betul is actually was-was. Tapi kalau for the Muslims, dalam Quran memang ada pun was-was tu kerja syaitan sebenarnya. Macam making you was-was. OCD is actually was-was. Was-wasa, you see. So mungkin yelah syaitan kerjanya macam mengacau kita kan, trying to keep us astray. So bila kita ni tak buat jahat, kita duduk rumah aja, dia kacau kita cari itu. Itulah bila menebasi sikit, duk fikir why, macam tu. Lack of purpose. Kalau dia stay dekat sekolah, dia mengajar, dia tak ada masa nak penat nak fikir pasal murtabak basi. Kalau I paling-paling Allah tak ada rezeki basi, besoklah aku beli lagi. Macam tu je kan. Tak ada fikir kenapa sampai menangis tak tidur malam. And I'm not kidding. I'm not even making up the story. You know, this is real. So to the girls, to the boys, you kan jangan malas. You know, jangan. Becoming like a housewife. Is okay if you actually lepas tu pergi kuliah duha ke, kuliah pengajian wanita ke, lepas tu you tanam pokok dengan kawan-kawan tu green initiative ke, but do not just stick and stay home is what I'm saying, or do not just stick and even if you go to school sekalipun, you know, don't be the mediocre person yang macam okay, I'm just gonna go to school and then go back and go to school, go back. When you start feeling that things are going around in a hamster wheel, you know, you start lacking the sense of purpose. This is where the mental health issues come from, okay? And then for this stage, if you develop it well, you actually develop a sense of care, right? You set a sense of care. This is the part where you care for your kids. And this is the part where some teachers, school teachers kan, macam-macam they go all out for the students because they have a purpose in life. They know what they want to get out of this life. You know, I want to help this child. Walaupun duit aku tak banyak, I'm just gonna do it. And you know, kalau aku tak boleh bagi duit, aku ada energy, aku ada, you know, ilmu, I'm gonna help. You see, that's why true teachers sometimes is just amazing, the things that they do for their students, right? And then the last part, integrity versus despair, right? This is the part where when reflecting on his or her life, the older adult may feel a sense of satisfaction ataupun dia rasa macam, my God, I wasted 70 years of my life. Like, what the hell did I do? You know, so sepatutnya lah kan yang macam bayi-bayi ayah saya lah, bayi-bayi mak saya kan, you know, your parents mungkin they are still young, they might be in middle age lagi lah kan. Kejap, tak, mak saya belum lagi pun old age rupanya, saya satu group dengan mak saya punya. You know, at that old age, right, they develop a sense of wisdom. So ini yang sepatutnya kenapa kita ada leader orang tua, sebab kita nakkan wisdom dia. Bukan tak boleh yang macam Syed Saddiq ni kan, bukan tak boleh dia jadi wakil rakyat, tapi istilah wakil rakyat tu apa? Dia mestilah macam kalau zaman dulu lah kan, dia macam tok ketua, tok batin, dia membawa masalah-masalah rakyat dan sebagainya kan. Jadi itu adalah hasil daripada hidup dia daripada infancy all the way until old age ni. Dia macam-macam dah ditengok dan sebagainya, dan at this stage, kalau dia go through all the stages well, dia dah tak tamak tau. Dia dah tak ada rasa apa-apa. Dia dah tak ada rasa macam dia nak curi duit rakyat ke, dia nak curi ini ke, dia nak curi itu ke. Dia dah fikir untuk macam, how can I help Malaysia? How can I help ni? How can I help? And they develop a sense of wisdom, you see. So kalau yang mana yang macam umur dah 60 lebih dan masih macam, you know, like engage in rasuah dan sebagainya, you know, there's a lot of those who are still like that. I'm not talking about politicians, I'm talking about just regular people here kan. You then wonder what went wrong in the social emotional development that they did not develop wisdom. And going back to Syed Saddiq tadi kan, kalau kat sini ni kan, dia dekat mana masa dia masuk politics tu, dia early adulthood lah basically. Ingat tak, early adulthood? He was not even an adult masa tu. So this is the part yang macam main kucing lah dalam Instagram lah, apalah, macini lah, mak muka comel, which is fine, tapi there's also a lot of sisi tidak matang Sadik lah. Ada fans kat sini ke kan, marah pula kejap lagi kan mati aku. So but this is why back then people, I think, used to have like the elders in the community being the respected ones because of their wisdom. But for some reason in today's world, a lot of older people tak ada wisdom, right? Tak ada that wisdom. Okay, so this is pretty much the social emotional development, and it's already 6:10. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to share on the Telegram group a video. It's a clip lah, basically, that I found on Instagram on how a small child has good social emotional competence. I don't know how the parents teach them, but you need to watch that conversation between the child and I think it's the mother. And what surprises me is that it's an Asian child, you see. I think lah, maybe mixed race ke apa, tapi what I'm saying here is that everyone is capable of having a healthy sense of social emotional development if we actually teach kids social emotional skills. You see, the thing is, all these things are not being taught. Like, it's okay untuk rasa marah, it's okay untuk rasa macam nak tumbuk orang, but do not tumbuk orang. Most of the time kita ni tak tahu macam mana nak ajar anak kita how to process emotions. So we keep it, right? And we never actually address like things like, not everyone gets to live life equally. So maybe you had a bad childhood, but now you're at this stage, we can always start at the beginning. Nobody actually teaches us all that. Nothing. It's not in any of our curriculum. It's not in any of our literature syllabus ke apa. Not even in pendidikan Islam where it's supposed to be. Pendidikan Islam atau pendidikan moral. Dan pendidikan Islam, pendidikan moral banyaknya macam tajuk akhlak, lepas tu apa, sifat mazmumah, sifat mahmudah, hafal aja. It's like it's just another academic subject. We don't teach these things. But in order for us to teach, in order for us to actually have good maritime engineers, surgeons, astronauts and things like that, it all goes down to how well they can become a human being, how well they can process emotions, how well they can be respectful of each other. Yang kalau kita tengok social media sekarang ni, it's like zero social emotional skills, yang cyberbullying, yang abusing, yang mencarut-carut entah apa-apa and all those things kan. Lepas tu yang sentak bergaduh balik, those are all social emotional skills. Zero, dah lah kau tak kenal pun siapa yang kau komen-komen kat dalam social media tu kan. Lepas tu nak sentak. Lepas tu dah berjam-jam pula berkomen-komen, bergaduh-gaduh kat dalam tu kan. The comment section is a scary place to be, Okay, so I'm going to share that and I'll see you guys same place, same time next week lah, insyaAllah. We will talk about moral development and then I will, kalau ada masa, kita cakap about the first learning theory on behaviorism, so you can perhaps plan your experiment. So minggu ke-6, I nak you plan your Piaget punya documentary, The 4 Stages of Cognitive Development, and also the behaviorism experiment, right? So that perhaps during week 7, bila korang beraya tu, bila mid semester break tu, korang pergi beraya tu, bolehlah korang record for the 2 group assignments, okay? So that is all for today, guys. Thank you so much. And if you have classes, more to go today, have fun with the classes, all right? Okay, Assalamualaikum. Bye.
Salam, Doktor. Thank you.
Thank you,
No problem.
Thank you, Doctor.
Sure.
Thank you, Doctor.